Every night, all across northeast Uganda, thousands of children flee their villages to sleep on the streets of local towns. They are fleeing a terror that grips the countryside by night, a rebel army that has abducted and enslaved thousands of children. Thomas survived kidnapped by the rebels, but at a price. They cut off his lips. But in this war, children are not just victims. It's also children, like this boy, who've done most of the killing. We were heading into a battle zone, land under threat from the rebel group known as the Lord's Resistance Army. They'd survived a government offensive. Now the rebels had advanced further south than ever before. The Lord's Resistance Army preaches that its fighters are invincible, that they are guided by the Holy Spirit, that every atrocity is endorsed by God. Our driver warned us we were entering the danger zone. You say we're in a danger zone?
Yeah, we are in danger zone. Anytime we can be sued or killed.
So the rebels are as far as here?
Yeah. He made a roadblock. He killed people, then he ran away.
He made a roadblock on this very road?
In this area.
We wanted to reach a government outpost, the beleaguered town of Soroti, before nightfall. I could see no sign of the Ugandan forces supposed to be defending the area. We've been driving to Soroti now for about 5 hours in this heavy, heavy rain. And I keep wondering, who has more of a stomach for this fight in this kind of weather, in this kind of terrain? The Lord's Resistance Army or the Ugandan People's Defense Force? We arrived in Soroti just after sunset. Night time is when the rebels make their incursions. The streets were empty, the buildings locked and shuttered. But this was no ghost town. In the daylight, the refugees emerged, sheltering in their thousands inside the town's schools and hospitals. We're here at Father Hilda's primary school in Soroti. Soroti had a population of 60,000 before the rebel incursion by the LRA. At the moment, the estimates are anywhere between 150 and 160,000 have moved into Soroti. It was easy to understand why. When the Lord Resistance Army attack a village, they take adults and older children to use as porters. Younger children face a different fate. They are brutalized and brainwashed and turned into child soldiers who are trained to kill without question. I'd heard some abducted children had managed to escape to Soroti. A refugee worker said I could meet them.
We have abductees.
Abductees?
Abductees, there are about 300.
There's 300 abductees, former abductees of the Lord Resistance Army?
Yeah.
Every one of these children had escaped or been rescued from the hands of the Lord's Resistance Army. Last year alone, the rebels abducted 8,000 children. To survive, some children are forced to kill even friends or relatives. It's how discipline is maintained. I mean, you're only 18.
18 years.
And how many people do they make you kill?
I killed 3 people.
You've killed 3 people?
Yes.
Can you tell me how you did that?
One, they told us to pick the sticks, very big sticks.
They told you to club them?
Big on the head.
On the head only?
Yeah. And the other made us to step on it, just a matter of stepping.
Just your feet?
Yeah, feet.
Did he speak? Did he say, please stop?
He was trying to ask forgiveness, but otherwise the other people refused.
That was the second person you killed?
That was the second person. And the third person, they gave us pangas. Just
pangas, big long knives?
Yeah.
And they told you to
kill him using a pangas.
I asked him how old were the rebels who had ordered the killings.
Not over that size.
They are the ones that say kill?
Yeah.
This size here we're looking at?
That size, yeah.
And these killings you've done, do they still come into your head?
Yes. Sometimes I do dream of them.
You dream about them?
Yeah. When you try to escape and they get hold of you, that is the end of your life.
This smuggled photograph shows the man who leads the Lord's Resistance Army. Joseph Kony is more cult leader than guerrilla fighter. He believes he is possessed by the Holy Spirit, that he is fighting to bring God's kingdom to Uganda. Other than that, his objectives are unclear. The Ugandan soldiers guarding the refugees at Soroti are part of a force that for 17 years has failed to defeat Kony's army of abducted children. Now, in the villages around Soroti, the government of Uganda is trying a fresh tactic. They are arming local people and organizing them into a militia called the Arrow Group.
What's happened?
They have stopped. Why have they stopped? We joined the militia leader, a government minister called Mike Mukula, on a recruitment drive in an area where the rebels had just been operating. The Minister for Health is here inspecting his troops. We're going to have a look at some of them now. And he is, you'll notice, the only one of his troops wearing a bulletproof vest like we are. The soldiers protecting him were jumping. I think they're going. We're going to go back to the car. Let's move. Driving at high speed is in the danger of ambush. We arrived at a village where 250 men had volunteered to sign up to the Arrow Group.
He has brought them even the condoms, so that when if they go out a little bit, they make sure that they have safe sex. We want the boys healthy.
The villagers are desperate for weapons. They have little faith in the Ugandan army. But the prospect of more armed men roaming the northeast of Uganda seems an unlikely road to peace. The truth is, the government is running out of ideas. We prepared to leave Soroti and head north to Gulu, in the heart of rebel territory. To avoid the risk of ambush, we hitched a lift in an armed helicopter. Shortly after we left Soroti, the Lord's Resistance Army ambushed a bus on the outskirts of the town, massacring 25 people. The town of Gulu lies in the heart of Acholi land, in the far north of Uganda. As we arrived, a remarkable nightly ritual was beginning. Thousands of people, children, grandparents, all moving away from what's out there, terrified to sleep out there in their villages. The Lord's Resistance Army claims to have its roots in the Acholi people, but it is the Acholi who are its main victims. Why did you come into town today?
Because of war.
Of war?
Yes.
Are there many rebels in your village? Are there rebels in your village?
Yes.
What do they do to you if you stay there?
They catch us, then they take us to the bush.
They cut you?
Yes.
So how old are you now, Florence?
I'm 14 years old.
You're 14?
Yes.
How long have you been doing this? How long have you been walking into the center of Gulu town?
It's since last year.
Since last year?
Yes.
Every day you do this walk?
Yes.
Why?
Because I fear if I stay at home, the rebels can come and attack me as they have done to my cousin sister.
They took your cousin's sister?
Yes. They have even killed my father, the same rebel, Joseph, the member of Joseph Coin. Whether I ask her, that my mom, how have they killed my father? My mom don't want to tell me. She said that if she told me, I'm going to be crying every time.
Everywhere you walk in this town at night, the most memorable thing you hear is the sound of children coughing. In a town bar, we met a local musician, Odidian Gek Tebeda. His song says, war has destroyed our life. My people, these atrocities have been committed by our sons. Coin, you have destroyed our homes. You have destroyed our lives. The next morning, the kids, cold and tired, began to return to their villages. Children who spend their lives in fear. Local religious leaders, Christian, Muslim and traditional, have been risking their lives to mediate. They argue military action against an army of abducted children can never be justified. Father Carlos Rodriguez is one of them. He's lived here for 15 years.
Most of the combatants of the LRA right now are people who were abducted, so they are not there out of their choice. They have been brutalized, they have been brainwashed, they are also afraid. We have probably reached a point in which we need some kind of international intervention. For instance, the problem of northern Uganda, which is a real tragedy, it has never been discussed in the UN Security Council, and we think it is high time that it should be discussed. The way people perceive is that, of course, here we don't have oil, we don't have mineral resources, this is not a place of strategic importance for anybody, this is why the world doesn't care about us.
Over 1 million Acholi people, nearly 80% of the population, now live in displaced people's camps. We drove to one, Pabo, 30 miles outside Gulu, along a road threatened daily by rebel attacks and littered with the wreckage of ambushes. 65,000 people live here, isolated and open to rebel attacks. One of their leaders is John Bosco Okello. In this camp where you're at, do you often hear gunfire?
When they entered, you hear gunfire. When they entered. But normally we just stay without anything.
It's becoming normal for you to hear these gunshots?
Yes, that is the case. That is the case. Yesterday evening, they abducted about 10 people from that road. They come for food. The transport is we people. We have to carry it up to that range. It's about 20 miles from here, that mountain.
That's where they ask you to take the food to?
Yes.
The 65,000 residents of this camp live and die in an area less than a mile square.
That is grave, and this one
It's
is
a grave for a
grave, and
child.
that one also grave.
And that's another grave for another person?
Yeah.
And that's a grave for a child?
Yeah.
Despite the presence of a small detachment of Ugandan soldiers,
Here.
children are sometimes
All
abducted
these
from the
walls,
camp
they are
itself.
abused.
Toilets are holes in the ground. There's no electricity. 2 years ago, the camp was hit by a lethal outbreak of Ebola disease.
Was not my.
How many people died of Ebola?
About 20 something.
20 people died of
20
Ebola.
people died with Ebola.
The only food comes in heavily armed convoys from the World Food Programme. They're never quite sure when the next convoy will arrive. Children die because of malnutrition here, while surrounded by some of the most fertile farming land in the world.
In Uganda, the most fertile place is here where you have already stood in. And the land is there.
At the moment, it's full of rebels.
Yeah.
The next morning, on the outskirts of Gulu, we joined the Ugandan army on morning patrol. They're checking that the roads are clear of any rebel activity so that the villagers can go back to their homes. They told me this stretch of road was particularly dangerous. So why is this area not so safe, Lieutenant?
This area is not so safe because this is normally the enemy's crossing point.
Then, one of them thought he saw something. So what are you doing now? You think the rebels are in the maze? They began to search the fields by the roadside. The patrol was heavily armed, the search thorough. The rebels in the maze turned out to be local villagers who told us that patrols like this were rare. The truth is, after years of war here and in the Congo, the army's lower ranks are exhausted, while the higher ranks are riddled with corruption. The villagers no longer trust the army to protect them. And there's another problem. Huge numbers of soldiers, for whom the government pays wages, exist only on paper. Army officers pocket the cash. An elected local official, Dona Sekelo, told me what that meant.
The government will say, we have 6,000 soldiers on the ground, and you would hardly get 600 on the ground. That means government does not know what is on the ground. The problem is that everybody in the army is doing business. And an army is not supposed to do business. There's a serious corruption in the army.
Later, we were taken to see some weapons captured from the Lord's Resistance Army. Uganda has given support to anti-government rebels in neighboring Sudan. In retaliation, Sudan supplied and armed the Lord's Resistance Army. And to this day, most of their arms, like these Iranian weapons, come via Sudan. Uganda pays a high price for supporting the Sudanese rebels. The following morning, we were told there'd been a major development. We're following the Army Public Relations Officer who's taking us to see one of the wives of Vincent Otti, who was a senior commander in the LRA. In fact, not one, but 4 wives of Vincent Otti, Konye's second in command, had escaped. They were deeply traumatized. All had been abducted as children. You're 14 now?
Yes.
And Vincent Otti made you his wife?
Yeah.
How old were you when he did that?
12 years.
You were
13 years old.
You were 13?
Yes.
Otti, it seemed, was especially angry about the escape of Agnes, abducted 7 years ago when she was just 15. A smuggled picture showed Agnes with Otti. He'd threatened to wipe out her village unless she was returned to him. But Agnes insisted her life as a rebel was over. We decided to go to Agnes's village, near the town of Kitgum, close to the Sudanese border. Flying was the safest way to get there. The roads are often mined and ambushed by the Lord's Resistance Army. And it looks like as we arrive, other people are also coming in this direction. Because of Otti's threat, the villagers had already fled their homes. They were busy building yet another displaced people's camp. They were frightened.
There is an order from the LRA leader, of which he said that he should kill about 5,000 people from our area.
Because the girl escaped?
Yeah.
In 1 week, thousands had fled to this camp. They had little food or shelter. Already, children were falling victim to diseases like scabies. This old camp, which has more than 10,000 people in it, is relying on one borehole for their water. Even here, the rebels were all around us.
Rebels are there.
More than 500 meters.
Up to now, rebels are there.
Are you saying if I walk that way for 1,000 meters, I might be in trouble?
Yes, you may be in problem.
1,000 meters from where we are standing.
Once you abducted, you may meet problem.
We were given this photograph. It shows what happened when the Lord's Resistance Army attacked the village of someone else who escaped. Some limbs and a head were found in the pot. The area around Kitgum has suffered terribly. One of the doctors showed us around.
These are the victims.
John Ochola is a living testament to the cruelty of the rebels.
It leaves both ears and the hands. So he was with us here for about...
George Komakech was attacked in his village by child soldiers carrying axes.
He was hacked and left for the dead, but somehow he didn't die. Look at this. Look at this.
How old were the people that did this to him?
From 10 to around 20 something. Like
From 10 years old?
Oh, yes.
MacLeod Ochola recently retired as a local Anglican bishop. His daughter committed suicide after being abducted and raped. Hello, Bishop.
Hello, how
11 years
sorry
later,
I'm late. Thank you for
his
coming.
wife was killed by a rebel lad.
We have been telling the government that over 90% of the LRA rebels are abducted children, and therefore government of Uganda as a nation has no moral obligation to wage war against those children. And we have been advocating for peaceful solutions which can actually save lives.
You want to forgive the rebels?
I have forgiven whoever did it to my wife, to my daughter, and to other people who died in this war. All of them have been forgiven.
This center is a sanctuary to some of the children who've escaped from the Lord's Resistance Army. Some were held for weeks, some years, some were born in captivity. These children have witnessed atrocities which no human should see, and many of them have taken a bloody part in those atrocities. Now they face another struggle, to come to terms with what they've done and recover the childhood that was stolen from them.
House of the Lord.